Carrie, it's the final day.
It is the final day.
I'm a little bit sad about it, to be honest. I've not got my usual energetic. I'm just fucking kidding. We're on day 8, everybody. Welcome back to the final interview series today. How amazing was yesterday, Carrie?
Yeah, it was awesome. It's always so fascinating speaking to Helen. She's got such a great knowledge on gun dogs, really great knowledge, and learning about, well, as you all know, I've got my own little gun dog, so I've been working for a lot of the foundation of her, and finding out what Helen thinks the foundation should be with your dogs. So it's something for you to go away and start thinking about and having a go at.
Yeah, because without those foundations, like, it's very easy, isn't it? And we've picked up on it a few times, is that it's very easy for people to like want to rush ahead. Like we see it in puppy classes. Oh, I want to teach Lucy walking and I want to teach recall. It's like, well, hang on a minute. All of these foundations that Helen's spoken about are more important because you can teach that stuff at any age, can't you?
Definitely.
So, final speaker. Can we have a drum roll? Another drum roll? I won't lie, I was a little bit nervous with the speaker, to be honest. And that's because I've looked up to this woman for a very long time. I remember being told about this lady when I was in university, and a friend of mine got so excited. I was like, who is she? Who is she? And to think, there I was years later interviewing her. So the final speaker. Do you want to introduce her, Carrie? Go on, introduce her.
Okay, I will introduce her because it was so fascinating listening to her. Enjoy today. I know you guys will. Here is Denise Fenzi.
I'm just going to welcome Denise Fenzi. How the hell are you doing?
Thank you so much. I'm doing well, thank you.
Fantastic. Do you want to tell the listeners and the viewers a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm like old. I've been training dogs for 40 years. So I was doing it when I was a kid. I was competing when I was a kid, and things have changed so much in that time. You know, it used to be a much harder world. So, I mean, if you think about it, it's a lot like children. We raise children very differently today than we used to. And I actually just made a comment recently. When my parents were raising me, they actually had it pretty good because they just didn't know what was going on. And, you know, there's a cocoon of comfort in ignorance. And the problem with modern raising of children is you know what's going on. And truly, I think it's easier if you don't know. But that comes from the fact that we interact with our children differently nowadays. And there's a much more open, much less punishment, much more reinforcement. So we really try to catch, what are the kids doing right? We try to work with that. And rather than punishers like, now go to your room and think about it, because, you know, honest to God, has any child ever gone to their room and thought about it? We're a lot more likely to recognize that there are reasons for behaviors and choices, and we talk things out. And so all of these things have bled down to how we raise our dogs. And so I've really had an opportunity over a long period of time to observe that process. And as a person who trained in ways that were really very unkind, back when I started, the difference in how I looked at my dogs, how my dogs probably viewed me, how I lived with them, what our mutual relationship was, is so dramatically different. I mean, really the littlest thing, like asking, how does my dog feel about that? I can guarantee you I did never ask that in the first 20 years of my dog ownership. And now it's my number one question. So it's a really dramatic change how we look at dog ownership. And I think because I've been around a long time, I have a lot of perspective on where we've been and what that means in terms of our relationships to our dogs.
Mm-hmm. I love it. I love it. So you've really seen it from all angles, I guess. Yeah.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah.
What was your biggest learning point in the, like, what made you change into more positive?
Oh, you know, it was definitely not a wake up moment in time. For starters, when you become a better trainer, you just naturally use fewer aversives because you don't need them. You just get better at what you're doing. So as your timing gets better, as your capacity to see what is happening improves, almost everybody I know, whether they use aversives in training or not, uses fewer as time goes by. It's just, you don't need to. I think the closest I've had to aha moments One is when I was in an environment where it was a new environment for me, and I was so appalled at the combination of lack of quality in the training and the way the dogs paid the price. I'd just never seen anything like it. It was, in my opinion, just horrific. And because I'm a slightly contrarian type individual, I was so offended and upset by what I saw as terrible, terrible training that it kind of made me go the opposite direction when I was in that environment, because I wanted to demonstrate that this is absurd, right? So I was already pretty modest, but at that point, then it becomes a point of pride to demonstrate a better, softer way. So that would have been one leap. And I guess another one was I was teaching seminars quite a lot, and then one day I realized that if I work with 10 or 12 dogs in a seminar, and if I did, let's say 20 or 30 seminars a year, because I used to teach them a lot, I would say 98% of the time, I never fixed the dog. I just had to fix the handler. So the handler, yeah, the dog sits too far away. And I look at it and I say, that's because you're handing the dog the cookie too far away. So I just want you to change your food placement. And all of a sudden the problem is solved. And that was truly the vast, vast, vast majority of my work with people, was solving the problems that they were creating. And then I really did start thinking about the idea of holding dogs responsible for the errors of human ability to communicate. And that was probably the closest I came to saying, I don't want to do this anymore. And even when I got to that point with my own dogs, I had been training positively for a long time, just because less and less was the issue coming up. It just didn't matter. I didn't need it. But it was quite a bit later before I stopped using aversives with other people. And I would say that was more of a philosophical shift. I already knew you could do it, but that was a bit of a mental change, that it's not right to hold the dog responsible for the incompetence of the handler, especially in the realm of dog sports, because dog sports are 100% optional. So if you're going to go into a sport, then almost by definition, it should be fun for everyone. It's not, these are not life and death events. These are not dogs running onto the freeway. These are dogs doing silly tricks for our entertainment, and they can be fantastic for everyone. I mean, I love dog sports, and I really believe my dogs do too. But then I just feel a higher level of obligation to make it. It's like taking your child to soccer. I mean, imagine if your child didn't want to go to soccer and you said, yes, but I like watching the game, so you have to play. Like, that would be a very odd philosophy, right? You're supposed to make it worth your child's while, or maybe your child isn't a soccer player. Maybe there's a chess player, and then you need to be thinking about that. Maybe you should be going to chess, right? And so I think all of that sort of contributed to where I've ended up today.
Mhm. Oh my God, I said this on all of the interviews. I've got so many questions buzzing in my mind now of what you've just said. Let me go back to, in fact, let's start, shall we, with, for anybody who doesn't know, what competition sports you actually participate in and kind of what that involves between human and dog and the
Oh,
environment.
gee. Well, I don't know if it's my primary sport. My primary love is competition obedience. So that's very, very high precision oriented obedience. I don't know if I will continue to compete in obedience, because I don't love the way the in-person competitions are in that sport. It's not really how I want to spend my time, but I love the training for it. And I like having a carrot out there. I like something dangling out there. And so I have a feeling I will end up participating in sports that don't require that level of precision, and yet I will train for it anyway because I love to do it. So that's definitely probably my base, and not to mention the skills that you need in precision obedience serve you well in other ways. I have competed in, let me think about this, tracking, high level tracking, high level obedience, high level IGP, which is a protection dog sport, low level herding, low level Mondio ring sport, which is another protection sport, middle level agility. There's probably more in there. I just forget, but a lot. I've been around the block, that's for sure.
So yeah, and it's, oh my God. Okay, so the competition sports and the precision. Let's look at the precision involved in this, because I think there's, well, you tell me different, but between what pet dog owners kind of need for their dog is just kind of that connection, isn't it? Where does it differ between pet dog training and the sports training and the precision that you guys need out in the field?
There's probably a few things. Precision work, it truly requires 100% of your attention in the amount of time you're training. So it really, it always catches my eye when a class runs for 1 hour in public and people expect the dog to pay attention for an hour. And within that hour, they are talking to their friends, they're digging through their bag, they're reading their book, they're looking at their phone, and yet they don't understand why their dog does not maintain that. True intense attention is exhausting, and people don't even recognize how much it takes of you to do that. So when I'm training my dog, if I train for 20 minutes, which is the outside of a session, that would be a longer session, it takes so much of my attention, because every second really matters in the world of precision. It really matters. And in the world of pet dog connection, it really doesn't matter in the same way. So if the dog came and got there eventually, it doesn't matter if it was a 100% straight line or if it was a little bit of a curving line with a sniff or two in between. So I think your ability to pay attention really goes up, and to identify the tiniest little things in your dog that tell you they are a happy dog or a less than happy dog. So today I do have my younger dog is reactive, and he struggles a lot with well, kind of everything. If it moves, he struggles with it. It could be a leaf falling off a tree. It's everything. He is what I call arousal looking for a trigger. Like he's not triggering on things. The whole world is a trigger for him. Now it's just a matter of deciding what he's going to attach that to. And is part of the process of working with him, I pay extreme attention. Like I identify the littlest flick of the ear that tells me he is aware of something out there. And then I go into that sort of training mode, whatever that might be. The ability to do that, to observe your dog and know what matters and what doesn't matter, really came from the precision work. Because people will say to me, I didn't see it coming. And I'm watching a scenario and I'm thinking 13 seconds ago, I knew we were on a bad train, but they didn't get off the train because they just didn't recognize the ear flicks, the little snuffling in the air, the starting to look away. And now to me, it's getting pretty obvious. Now the dog's up on their toes, their neck is arched, and the owner just at that moment is watching off in the distance. And I'm over there thinking, oh, it's like when you're watching somebody drowning and you're like, help them, and you're in a dream and nobody can hear you and nobody's helping and the beach is filled with happy people. They're dying. That's how I feel when I watch a person with a reactive dog who is missing all of the picture and then says it came out of nowhere. Because so many problematic dog behaviors, dogs biting people, dogs running off, they rarely come out of nowhere. They almost always came rather obviously. It's just our ability to read those small signs. So if you have a pet dog who's super good natured and everything is fine, then your need for that level of connection is probably not there. You can live very well without it. But if you do struggle, then I think that ability to read dog behavior at a super refined level is quite helpful. And I would say that precision gives you that. And dog sports in general, when I talk to dog trainers, I strongly encourage them to at least dabble. And the reason is, if you can train your dog to perform in public off leash at a dog show, then you actually, not the theory, you actually have the applied ability to train a dog for distraction work. And unfortunately, and I'm sure you know this, there's a lot of great theory, but there's also a lot of room between knowing applied practical techniques. Like, what do you do when the dog's nose is glued to the ground and it smells good, right? If you're a dog sports competitor, you either figured that out or you didn't make it to the dog show. So the techniques are there. And I think there's so much in that world, whether it's agility or obedience, that we can pull from and we can learn from them and we can apply those to our pet dogs.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. Yeah, I completely agree. I've dabbled in the competition obedience world. I actually got my youngest shepherd to do a bit of that with IGP. He's not that sort of dog. He's like, no, I'm a scent dog, mom. I don't want to do that. But it really opened my eyes as well to, you were talking about the precision and what you see a lot more of. And more importantly, like the dog loves it. You know, that you said your dog loves the work, and whatever work we do with the dog, whether it's that sports work, whether it's that tracking, whether it's the agility, providing the dog is loving it, then go for it, I'd say.
Absolutely. And there's no reason why your dog shouldn't love it if you're teaching it well.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of pressure, isn't there, on I think owners feel a lot of pressure with their dogs. Especially we help with managing barking dogs, and we find a lot of owners have lost their confidence, and they're kind of putting a lot of pressure on themselves and the dog, and they've kind of forgot to have that level of fun. I think taking it out of the real life setting, if you like, and putting it into an activity such as a sport can really help with the owner's mindset as well. It's like, oh, it's just a game, we're just having fun, which can help with
I love that line of thinking, because I have an online dog training school, and people will talk to me about what class they should take, right? And they'll be having some behavior problem, and they'll list them all out. I took this one, I took this one, I took that. Now they're 6 months in. And I said, I would like to encourage you for the next term not to take any of those. Go do something, go do nose work. Go do relationship walk with your dog. It can't be all work and no play. You have to, because you're going to lose the joy of dog ownership if all you do is focus on what's wrong. Let's find what's right with your dog. And I do think heavy behavior work is very stressful on the humans, and it is stressful on the dog. And I think people do lose the forest. Like, you got a dog to have a friend. So how can we get back to that and then help owners? I'm exceptionally sympathetic to the reality of pet dog ownership and how difficult it is to work with a dog when everybody in society is quite sure that the reason your dog is acting like that is because you did it all wrong. And if one more person asks me if my dog was a rescue, I mean, no, he is one of those dogs who was born a little genetic tweak. I knew at 8 weeks. I knew. I mean, I got him off the airplane, and I walked outside and a truck went by and he lost his mind, and I had no idea why he was screaming. It wasn't until the second truck went by that I kind of started to figure it out. He's just unbelievably predatory. That's who he is. It makes sense. He's bred for the protection sport, so that prey interest is very, very strong. But I did not cause it. And he is who he is. I love him to bits, but I don't take it personally. And I think pet dogs, society's a little bit ignorant about some of these matters. And so it puts pet people in a really hard space when everybody's looking at them like they're so terrible. And what did you do? Did you abuse that dog? Is he a rescue? And the poor person is just doing their best, and everybody's got advice for them. It's a tough road for a pet person. So looking for something fun to do with your dog, whether it's really rally or nose work or agility or just playing your silly games at home. Tricks are fantastic. Like, and you can go online, and there's organizations now that offer titles for tricks. You don't even have to go to shows. There are so many things you can do in the online world that just are fun and will remind you how clever your dog is. Dogs are very clever. They know so much. Go have fun with your dog. And that's what we can do with dog sports.
I love it. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about your dog? Is it just the one dog you have?
I have 3.
3.
So
tell us about them.
Yeah. The oldest is Lyra. She's 10 years old. She is, I think, 4th generation of my breeding program. And she actually has all of my best competition dogs in her background. And for whatever reason, she has opted out of dog sports. So I worked with her for a few years. She knows all the things. I trained her to do all the things. And I realized that she simply was not going to maintain that love and joy in public, training and working. And one of the best days of my life was when I said, tell you what, we aren't going to go to dog shows, because this is clearly, your heart is not there. She is the best pet dog on the planet. She likes everybody. She likes all dogs. If I just want to have a dog along to go out camping, whatever, she's the perfect dog. She's lovely in the house. She's great with kids. She's just a lovely dog who would prefer not to go to dog shows. So she does not, and she never has. My second dog is Brito. He's 8 years old. I was teaching a seminar in Texas, and he's just cute. So I was playing fetch and such. Somebody goes, oh, do you need a border collie? Like, there's a whole bunch of dogs running loose in this room after the day. And I'm like, I need a dog like a hole in the head, but the little white one is cute. But I didn't know he was needing a home. And they said, oh, well, he needs a home too. I'm like, uh-oh. And the next thing I know, it was like a movie. Everybody was gone and all the dogs were gone except for me and this little white dog. It was like some pre-planned, it was so funny. But he was super cute. So I brought him home and I really did not need a dog. And then that was a conversation with the husband, I tell you. He was actually at a soccer game with my children. And I called him and I said, hon, there's this dog. And he's like, we don't need a dog. I know, we absolutely don't need a dog. But the kids don't even have a dog. It's like, we don't need a dog. We had 3 at that time. We don't need a dog. No, we definitely don't need a dog. But this dog is so small. He's only 5 pounds. He's not even going to show up. We don't need a dog. We absolutely don't need, I hear you. We don't need a dog. I've never trained a small dog. We don't need another dog. Oh my God, you are so right. But I've never trained a small dog. Plus he's a terrier mix. So anyway, we got another dog. And my husband said when he was sitting at the soccer game and he hung up, the people around him were going, you're getting a dog.
You wore the trousers that day, did you?
Yeah, well, we got what I didn't tell him, and he still does not know to this day. I had already bought the dog's flight ticket by the time I even got on the phone with my husband. So there's some truth to the fact. Yeah, so that's my little terrier dog, and he's the dog I mostly use for demonstrations for my training. I never competed with him either, but he's just fun to work. I really did take some time off out of the competition ring for a while. I was raising small kids. I was in a pretty intense work situation. I was starting some online stuff. I was doing other things. But now my kids are older. They're 16 and 20. I really wanted to get back into dog sports. I really wanted a dog who would want to play my games. And so I got my young dog, my 3rd dog, and that one's driving me to drink. Well, no, that's not fair. I've always drank, but I drink more now. So he's just really, he's just a handful in a lot of ways. But in my opinion, it's because he's such a great dog. So that's what I'm holding on to. I think because he's such an amazing dog that once we all get on the same team, it's going to be good. But it's not going to be in the ring when he's 2. And some dogs will. I've had dogs that were competing before too. They were great. I would not be surprised if he's not able to compete until he's more like 4. And that's okay. There's no race here.
Mm-hmm. I love what you've just mentioned there, in that you're saying he's driving you crazy, if you like, but that he's going to be amazing. And I say this a lot to owners, when they come in with he's being so naughty and he's being like just a pain in the ass. I'm like, actually they're like really intelligent. The naughtier the dog, the more intelligence they seem to have. And then when we communicate that to the owner and show them, like their faces just drop. And they're like, oh my God, I got this dog so wrong. Which brings me on to the next question for you. Let's go with, how does it feel to you to gain an animal's trust and connection, especially when it's come from a place of perhaps they get easily distracted, or a person might label an animal naughty?
Oh, wow, an interesting question. When I was doing a lot of training at my house, I always started because I was doing only private lessons, and I always started with shaping. And the reason I started with shaping is after 5 minutes, the dog kind of does that classic, is that it thing, right? You're working on something and then they pause and then they look at you, and every single person on the planet recognizes what just happened there and realizes how much is inside of a dog. Like that's how a human being looks at another human being when they're not sure if they got it right. And it's a super recognizable look. And I always did that because I wanted people to understand how amazing dogs are. And once you've seen that, I think once you've seen that look and you start realizing how much we have in common with a dog, then you recognize what an amazing, amazing privilege that we live with another species in our house for basically free. I mean, there's some expense, but very little, really. You can own a dog. You can own a dog. That is an amazing thing. And then to recognize that you can have a relationship in the same way you have a relationship with people, with give and take. You get your way sometimes, I get my way sometimes. I'm usually happy with you, but sometimes I'm not. I don't have to hurt you, but I can be unhappy with you at times. And the dog recognizes all of this. And then the dog recognizes that it's better. The status quo is better and happier when we're all on the same page. And so everybody is working to get along. And to know that I can have dogs living in my house with all of that going on in their head is just mind-boggling to me. And that my dogs naturally look to me when they're not sure is a big deal. So if something is happening and they're having some unsureness, they check. And that's a point in time that comes when they check, and I can tell them, no, you're fine. We're going to go over here now. And they accept that rather than the phase when the dog is pretty sure they have to solve their own problems. And so when things are happening in the world, they don't look to you for guidance. And frankly, it's because if you don't prove to your dog that you're actually trustworthy, like if I tell my dog, I put you in a situation and I will never let a bad thing happen to you in that situation, then over time, the dog believes me. But if you put your dog in situations and you repeatedly allow bad things to happen to your dog, then it's not a big surprise that the dog starts to fend for themselves. And so to me, that moment of trust is really when I notice when my dog is a little unsure that they check to see. I'm not saying all the time they want to do, they're dogs, they want to do what they want to do. But in those moments of unsureness, they're looking back and saying, how are we handling this? And I can tell them everything is fine here. And they believe me. That's kind of a cool moment.
I love that. And because I think that's a moment that a lot of owners actually don't have at the minute. And they've still got that dog that is making their own choices, and it's getting misunderstood. Like the lines of communication between the two species, I think, are being misunderstood. What would you say to somebody who is perhaps in that place and wants to get to the place where the dog is saying, hey, is it cool?
So I don't know what's going on over in England with this right now, but in the United States, there's a lot of conversation about the topics of structure and choice. So structure are the things we do where we set up the parameters, and choices are the things we give within that structure. So for example, my dogs in my home, structure might be, there are certain places you're not allowed to go. And the reason they're not allowed to go there is I know they'll make bad decisions. So if my dog goes to the window where the feral cat likes to show up, I know that what's going to happen next is probably not to my liking. My dog is going to scream and bark. So the structure is that you're blocked from that window. You cannot look out that window. The choice is that you can do anything else you want in the house. So there are parameters. What I tell people, especially with more challenging dogs in public, it is your job to set up the structure. So don't go down the street with the dog behind the fence that's going to cause your dog to throw a fit. That's where you step up. But the choice is, but once you're out, the dog can choose to sniff, walk, sightsee, all of the things that there are no possible bad choices. So anytime I have an option, I give my dog choice, but only if there's no bad choice possible. Over time, if you keep setting up the world so that there is choice within structure, so that no bad choices are likely, I'm not saying never, there's nobody's that good, but for the most part, the goal is to minimize bad choices. I think that is what causes dogs to start to trust us. Because if you don't structure your dog and you let your dog wander right up to a fence and then some dog screams at them, that didn't serve them well. Like you wouldn't do that with a toddler. You wouldn't let your toddler walk up to, let's say, a mentally ill homeless person who's sort of muttering and drinking and acting odd. You wouldn't let your child just walk up to get a better look. One, because it's not kind to the homeless person. And two, because the homeless person might lose it, right? You don't know that. So your job is, no. Your choices are, we can go into the park, we can go to the back of the park, but we cannot go up to that person that's not kind to bother that other person. And then you enforce those choices and those parameters. And that allows your child to start to recognize over time that you actually know things and will help them stay safe. And I think if we think about it like that with our dogs, we are the parents. We are responsible for setting up situations where they can be successful. And while we are not in words going to explain to our dogs, I do have a leash and I will use my leash. And I recognize that my dog often would prefer not to be on a leash. So one could argue that's an aversive. And I'm okay with that. I feel like there are times when, without using pain, that I will insist on my way. And that could be management equipment, leashes, harnesses, whatever works for you. And I think that actually leads to communication and trust when the dog recognizes that you know things and will keep them safe.
Yeah, I love that. And some dogs need more direction than others, don't they? You know, it's otherwise the loose cannons. If anyone's listening to this and you've heard my stories of Digger, that's where the lead's involved.
Yeah. Wait, you talk about difficult dogs and intelligence and such, and I see a really significant difference. The really lively dogs that are always moving and getting into stuff, I do believe they're super, super bright. Just like if you look at human children, sometimes those really energetic ones that you want to shake, the reason they're energetic like that is because everything's moving. The brain is moving, the body's moving, and they are difficult. But if you can work with it, you're not trying to smash it, you're trying to structure it and direct it. I do think that often that's the brilliance, just without structure yet. It doesn't know where to go. And some of the dogs that I happen to love as pets, they're barely moving. I love that because they're really easy. They're like, they look good in front of the fireplace. You can take a lot of good pictures, but there's less going on in there. And I think like, I'd love to have both kinds of dogs. And I think they both bring different things to the table. But I'm kind of fond of my lively, troublesome dogs.
Yeah, the ones that given me the most grey hairs is the one that's taught me the most as well. It was a complete difference from the shepherds that I'd always kept, and along came this little wiry border terrier with a mind of his own, working strain, like really unsocialized. And I was like, oh my goodness, what is this thing I've been handed? But yeah, they teach you the most, don't they? And when you tap into that intelligence and you see that, wow, my mind was blown anyway.
I'll tell you a quick story. When I brought my little terrier home, I've mostly had Belgians and herding dogs, and I took him to a dog training event, and we walked by a crate, and the dog in the crate yelled at him, and my heart in 1 second just sank, because all I could think was, 4 months old, he's ruined for life. Because when a Belgian at 4 months of age, if a dog rocks the crate yelling at them, it often has this enormous impact on them. They become so fearful, and I just remember my heart dropped. And in that half a second, my dog turned around and said, "Who said that?" And the next thing I know, he's yelling and throwing himself on the leash. And then he sees this German Shepherd. Now he's 5 pounds. He sees this German Shepherd about 15 feet away who had nothing to do with anything. And he decided it was that dog. And he's yelling at that dog, "You come over here. I'm going to tell you who's yelling at who." And I was so shocked. I'd never had a dog like that. I was so used to the ones that hit the ground and peed. And now I've got a dog who's going to take on the German Shepherd who's not even looking at him. And I just sort of picked him up and popped him in his crate and covered him and said, "All right, we're on a different road. This is not the road I know."
Yeah.
But like you said, it was great. I've learned so many new things about that dog. So it's awesome.
Yeah, we've had similar stories actually, because it was exactly the same with Digger. The day he ran off into the cow field and went straight for the bull was the day I was like, wow, I've got a whole lot of dog here. So yeah, they really open your eyes, don't they? So let me just come back to this sports world and the levels of distractions that you guys like train around and work around in the ring, but then can we tie it back to pet owners as well? Because a big question that we always get asked is, we do absolutely fine until we come up against the distraction. So do you want to tell us about the level of distractions that you train towards for the sports world, competition world?
Yeah, and they're super, super individual. So for some dogs, it might be the people. There's a lot of people at a dog show, so they might be attracted towards people. For other dogs, it might be the dogs. There's a lot of dogs at dog shows. For other dogs, it might be the smells. There are vendors that are cooking hot dogs and, all the different food possibilities. And some of that food, unfortunately, does end up on the ground because kids are walking around. It can certainly happen that a child will be eating that hot dog outside your ring, watching. So things like that happen because people aren't thinking about how that might manage for a dog. I think one of the hardest things is that you don't have food or toys with you. So what you really have is the habit of the work that you have developed over a long time. And either your dog has learned to love the work and sticks with it because it's what you do together, and because you have taught them to stick it out for really long periods of time without an alternative, because you are not going to have something to compete with the environmental reinforcers. I think that's where people really struggle. They get in such a habit of using what they have to compete with what the world has, rather than focusing on teaching the dog to love what you do together, and then systematically introducing tiny little distractions. So my dog had to learn food refusal. And that means that the person can do, well, actually, I did a trial with my dog in this given sport, Mondio. And the food refusal, they have a theme for the trial, and the theme was Dr. Seuss and the green eggs and ham. They put green eggs and ham on a plate and literally put it on her front feet. So that was a pretty significant challenge. In higher levels, they'll throw the food at the dog. The dog is on a down stand. They're raining food down on the dog's face. Hot dogs, cheese, it's all over the ground. It's on the dog. And the dog is expected to shut their mouth and turn away, not end up with that food. And so with my young dog, the way I taught it, first, of course, he needed a downstay. And then I took his toy and just placed the toy on the ground. So he would look at it. And then I would take a second toy and I would reward him out of the down up and play a really, really good game of tug. And then I would put him back on a down and I would put the second toy on the ground and I would pick up the first one. And I did this until when he saw a toy on the ground, he would look at me rather than the toy on the ground. And then I started putting it a little closer to him, and then I started dropping it near him. And the reason I used a toy is I figured the worst thing that would happen is he would grab the toy, but a dead toy is not that interesting if you're not throwing it or playing tug. And I did that until I could throw toys at his mouth and he would shut his mouth and turn away. And then I did 4 or 5 toys before I'd reinforce. And then I went with kibble. So how about one little dog training treat kibble 5 feet away? I would walk up and I would play with his toys. And I just slowly added complexity until I could throw anything at him. And it doesn't matter what it is. And he's happy. He's like, great, bring it on. Because the more crap you throw at me, the better it's going to end up being when it's time for the party. So I think we think of distractions as something we train in as opposed to something we avoid. When you think about avoiding them, the problem is it's really easy to start getting into that, like, leave it thing, which no dog listens to anyway. And that's a negative argument. And you don't want to be having a fight with your dog. You want to be having a cooperative event. So what I really want is my dog to look at the thing and then look back at me and have it be a positive event. So I want environmental triggers to cause my dog to have a positive response that involves me. I see a thing on the ground and I want it. Let me check with mom. That's what I'm looking for. And so it becomes fun. It's a game as opposed to a negative.
Instead of the dog just tolerating because that's a lot of what it is, isn't it? With, I see in pet dog world, is like the dog just tolerates what the owner kind of says, and it might be a little bit harsh in some respects, but I always ask the question of, well, what would the dog do if the lead was off? In a lot of different settings, would you kind of agree with that?
Well, yeah, that made me laugh because many a traditional trainer has said to me, what are you going to do when you don't have your cookies? And my response is, what are you going to do when you don't have your leash? So we're all in the same boat. The difference is I've never needed a recall if my dog was on leash. They're on leash. I can just use it. When I need obedience is when I can't control the dog physically. That's when I have to have, and my dog doesn't actually know if I have food or toys, but they most certainly know if they're wearing a leash. So in terms of balance, the nice thing about positive reinforcement is it follows the behavior. If my dog does something at home which shocks me with its brilliance, I can go to the refrigerator and I can reinforce it. I don't have to have it on me. And on more than one occasion, I have run into the house with my dog saying, heading to the fridge, cookies, the whole way, cookies. And the dog is just so excited and isn't exactly sure what we're doing as I'm running to the refrigerator, opening it, digging through anything I can find, and then just raining the food on the ground, cookies. They know that I have access. And as the one with the opposable thumbs, there's something to be said, cooperating with me, no matter where it happens or when it happens. Punishers are pretty tricky because it's not going to work that way. If the behavior happened and if you don't have your hands on the dog, there's really nothing you can do, because even if you track the dog down, there's no way the dog is going to understand that the lack of a recall 1 minute ago is the reason I'm yelling at you now. It doesn't work that way. So I actually have a huge benefit because I can bridge from the moment of the good behavior all the way to the follow-up with whatever it is I might have.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely love that. It's about building, you mentioned earlier about building the habit, so that it becomes automated and the dog isn't reliant on the like one reinforcer. You have a multitude of reinforcers. And I guess as well, for owners listening to this, it's like, try not to expect to, well, you tell us, but what would you say for like lumping, for example, but in a more rushed form opposed to precision work?
Yeah, no, it doesn't work. You can't do it. The thing about precision is, if you want your dog to attend to every second, then every second needs to be taught separately and reinforced. So if you're looking for 10 beautiful seconds in a row, there's no way the dog can know if it was the first second you were happy about, the third one, the fifth one, the eighth one, or the 10th one. So you really need to break everything down to every single moment that interests you. And I know that can sound to people like, my God, how controlling. Let me tell you, I am the least controlling human being on the planet. I control very little. I hire great staff, and then I say, only come to me if you need me. Like, figure it out, make decisions, and if you make mistakes, I don't care, right? Try not to make too many of them. The trick is hire good people and then support them. And with my dogs, the only place I'm really controlling is within the precision work. But I don't think of it as controlling. I think of it as communicating second by second. And I think dogs really love to use their brain. They love the game of listening. It's like the game of Simon Says. What is the game of Simon Says? Extreme attention. Simon said, right? And everybody wants to pay attention and they want to get it right and they want to operate quickly because of the game. So I don't see that as oh, what a terrible game that you play with these children. No, it's a fun game. And I think if you think that way, there's nothing my dog would rather do than train with me. There's nothing. So when you talk about multitudes of reinforcers, my dog's primary reinforcer is the opportunity to work. So today I was doing our work in public. Here were the rules. He's on a flexi leash, so I can prevent really problematic behavior. I did lots of just saying his name, which means come back to me for a hot dog. So randomly, walking along, doing nothing, sniffing a spot, looking, it didn't matter. There's nothing happening. And I'm calling him back fairly frequently just to get him nicely warmed up. A couple of times I called him and he didn't respond immediately. So I locked the flexi because I'm not going to allow him to go forward with it. And then, and he comes back, he gets the cookie no matter what. He came back, eventually he got the cookie. However, I did raise criteria here because he understands this game. And when we did see a trigger, about half the time I would call him back, he'd come back and get his cookie, but about half the time he would come back without me calling him. So what that tells me is that the distraction itself had become the cue to return. On those episodes, he got work instead of food. And the reason he got work is always to a toy. Toy is higher value than food. So now I have a dog who would rather work than, and that is the maximum reinforcer. What a deal. Now I call him back. He gives me his spectacular healing. I reinforce that with a toy. So the ability to do that makes it pretty obvious that the dog loves to work, because otherwise the dog isn't going to return. Oh boy, you get to go back to work. I mean, that's kind of weird, right? But that tells you a lot about where the dog is at in terms of how he feels about doing these things with me.
Oh my God, listeners, you've got a massive nugget there, a massive nugget. I love the fact that you brought that in, because you said earlier about people seeing things as, seeing distractions, as an issue and a problem. And for some people, they can be if the dog's in the wrong setup or the wrong environment at the wrong time. But if people could learn what you've just taught them, that you can use those distractions to create that alternative behavior, then wow, would the dog world be in a much better place? So take that golden nugget and put it into practice for sure. Okay, Denise, what are your top 3 tips for our listeners to get their dog like fixated on them, glued on them? Top 3 tips for engagement.
Be super, super generous with reinforcement. That's got to be That's got to be the highest one. If you don't just make a habit of carrying food, especially with a young dog, make it a habit. Just always have access to reinforcers, either in bowls around your house, just on your counters and such, or in your pockets, or if you want to do the bait bag, I don't care what you do. But I think the ability to interact with your dog and offer a classic reinforcer for things you ask for, sit down, come, is probably one of the easiest ways to get the dog thinking you matter. And the second one is almost the reverse. You got a dog for a reason. I have to assume you like your dog. Like, I hope you didn't get a dog as like, because it looks good in your house. You got it because you like dogs, you love dogs. Don't hold back on that one. Your dog should know how much you love them and how proud you are and how much you enjoy their company. So never walk away from an opportunity to scratch your dog's tummy and to be silly and to grab their feet and to just for no good reason at all go zooming through the house while your dog chases you down. Like, if you start making yourself silly and interesting, first of all, it's very good for you. It's going to add years to your life. This is why we get dogs. It reduces your stress. They talk about oxytocin, which is that bonding hormone that we have with our human babies. When you play with a dog, this is proven. It raises the oxytocin levels in both the people and the dog. So everybody benefits hugely by being silly and playful. That's the two. And probably the third is make sure it's happening on a regular basis. If you're not putting some kind of energy into, it's just like with human beings. If you don't take care of your relationships, they struggle. So against my children's best wishes, they have no choice but to eat with the family several days a week. So even though at dinner time it's busy and everybody wants to get off and do their things, and that's all fine, we kind of insist a few days a week, and they complain nonstop all the way to the table. But you know what? By the end of dinner, everybody's usually kind of laughing and interacting, and then they often stick around for another 5 minutes because we're just having a nice time. Make it happen. Like, make the time to be with your dog. And I think it's like exercising. Like, at first you're like, oh, I really don't want to do it. But when you actually get up and get out and do it, you're like, this is great. Why didn't I want to do it? So, put that in your head somewhere that you'll have a great time and it's super healthy.
I love that. Especially, I love all of them, but that last one you mentioned, because it can be very easy to get into a stuck, almost, what's the word? Like a resentful mindset of the dog, isn't it? Especially if it's coming from a place of discomfort for the handler and the dog itself. So yeah, and providing that structure and changing the mindset on the situation. Love, love, love.
Since you have talked a lot about dog sports, the other thing is I think it's a lot easier to put that time aside every day to spend time with your dog if you have a carrot out there, a little carrot. So I strongly recommend find even a dog sport. The entry level is, let's say, 5 tricks, 5 simple tricks. I think for a lot of people, knowing that they could do a little video submission with their 5 tricks and get a little novice title saying you did your 5 tricks, it matters. Human beings are driven by goals, and it doesn't have to be competition. I'm not actually a fan of competition. I do compete because that's the way it works. But I compete because I want to show people what I did, not so that I can win things. But having a carrot out there does matter. And I find I train much more intentionally if I know that there's something that will be judging me. So, and I would, just like with a dog, we split things down. Do it with yourself too. Don't shoot for crufts. Don't start there. Start with a small online competition. Pick your sport, doesn't matter, anything you want. Start little. Or fitness. Fitness is fantastic. Fitness skills for dogs are great. And set a goal. I'm going to teach my dog to get on this thing and balance all 4 feet, right? And actually, I know for a fact that dogs like this too, because I got this air mattress for my dog to practice on, and he had a really hard time at first. And then yesterday he kept getting on it, even though I was done. So he recognizes that he is successful, and I think he's enjoying the challenge. Mm-hmm. So maybe get yourself a carrot out there. It can be a tiny carrot, and start working towards your carrot.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I was literally, the last question I had for you is what motivates you to work hard, and you've kind of answered that beautifully and given an additional, which is fantastic. Well, Denise, is there anything else you want to add to this?
Do you think? No, this has been a lot of fun. I appreciate you having me.
No, we appreciate you coming on, Denise. It's been absolutely amazing talking to you. Where is the best place that people, you mentioned about your academy, so where's the best place that people can go and find out more about you and what you do?
Fenzi Dog Sports Academy is my online school. We offer 40 classes a term. If you want to take dog sports and you want to learn them online, that's the place to go. Fenzi Team Titles is one of many online options for titling dogs. So if you do want to learn the very entry levels, you can go through our program, super supportive groups. You don't even have to pay us anything. You can do the titles without training with us. So it's a nice online opportunity to like show that you learned the nose work or that you learned the obedience. Love to have you, super friendly with everyone. So yeah, check it out if that interests you.
Absolutely, yeah. I've checked it out and I nearly signed up. So I might see you all in there, guys.
That we would love to have you. And if you don't, you can follow me. I'm super active on IG. I give away a lot of free training on Instagram, a little bit on Facebook, a little bit on TikTok. TikTok's a crazy little world. But anyway, Instagram is where I'm most comfortable right now and spend a lot of energy. And if you are, I don't know what your audience base is, I am not judgmental about how people train their dogs. So I call myself method agnostic. What that means is I train with positive reinforcement. That is what I believe in. That is what I love. But if you train differently, you are so welcome. You're still welcome to come and see what I do and spend time with me and ask me questions. And I'm not going to be judging you because we're all on our own path. So if that is something you need, then I hope you'll feel comfortable in my spaces.
Yeah, and I'm sure you will, the listeners. So yeah, go and check out Denise Fenzi's Academy. Thank you so much, Denise. I think we'll leave it there if you've got nothing else to add.
No, I appreciate your time.
No, and you too, Denise. Right, listeners, thank you very much for tuning into this show, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.
Goodbye.